Welcome to this explainer. Grab a coffee and settle in, because today we're having a very honest conversation about how Australian accounting firms can actually automate compliance work and do it securely. I'm sitting down with a firm owner who is feeling the exact same burnout many of you are right now. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time. Look, to be completely honest, I'm just exhausted. Running a practice right now, well, it feels a bit like walking up and down escalator. I'm really hoping you've got some actual practical answers for me today. I'm very glad we could sit down together. And trust me, you're definitely not alone in feeling that way. Today we're going to talk through exactly what is possible right now for practices with 2 to 30 staff. So let's just start with a bit of a reality check.
You absolutely nailed it there. Half my senior accountants were actually logged in on Sunday, just trying to clear the backlog of ATO letters. It's relentless. That weekend work is costing us an absolute fortune in overtime, and honestly, staff morale is pretty much at rock bottom.
And that right there is exactly why we're starting here. The heavy compliance and admin burden weighing down Australian accounting practices is incredibly real. The rules just keep shifting, and the volume of communication coming from the ATO and ASIC, it literally never stops. It takes a massive psychological toll on a smaller practice. You start losing really good staff to burnout. Plus, there's this constant lingering fear in the back of your mind that you'll miss a critical deadline just because something got buried at a crowded inbox.
Exactly. Tax preparation and BAS, well, those are just the baseline anyway. But it's the client reporting and the endless ATO correspondence that really stall our growth. My senior staff are basically doing admin instead of actual advisory work.
Right. When your team is stuck trying to reconstruct context across 3 different systems just to answer one simple client email, they simply can't focus on high-value advisory work. Just think about all those hidden, non-billable hours lost hunting down email threads and cross-referencing spreadsheets. For an accounting practice of your size, these exact friction points are where time evaporates and mistakes happen. The pressure to automate is totally obvious, but how you automate, well, that is the actual problem. Let's look at what most firms try to do first and why it usually fails.
Yeah, I hear you. I've got competitors talking about sending data offshore to cheaper teams, or they just copy and paste client documents into those big public AI tools. I'll admit, it does sound like a really quick fix just to get the work done.
It might seem quick, but as a practice owner, you've got to look at the massive trap hidden there. Sending data to public AI or offshore teams creates major exposure. You're suddenly relying on external, global servers. Then you have the very real legal reality of the Privacy Act 1988 and the Australian privacy principles. Using generic tools or offshore teams for client data creates severe data sovereignty risks. Your firm handles incredibly sensitive financial information, and you simply cannot feed that into a public machine learning model.
Spot on. We have incredibly strict professional obligations. Look, I would never pin a client's tax file to a public notice board down the street, so I certainly can't let a public AI read it either.
That is absolutely crucial. The risk of breaching confidentiality is very real. If the provider can't explain exactly where your data is processed, exactly who accesses it, and exactly how it is protected, you just can't use it. You need absolute control over your client data to meet your obligations under Australian law. There are simply no shortcuts when it comes to compliance. So we really need a proper alternative.
Okay, so if the generic tools are completely out, what is the actual solution for an Australian practice like mine?
The real solution is what we call a sovereign AI operating system. With Sunny AIOS, it's a closed, locally governed platform built specifically for Australian professional services. Your data literally never leaves the country. And crucially, it's built by operators, not just technologists. That means it was built by people who actually understand the pressure of lodgement dates and the sheer stress of a looming ATO audit. It understands the specific constraints and requirements of an Australian accounting firm. It's all about you taking control of the technology rather than letting the technology expose your firm to risk.
Okay, I really like the sound of that, but I do need to understand the technical reality here. How does it actually protect us compared to all the generic stuff out there? It really comes down to exactly where the servers sit. Sunny uses Sydney local zones, meaning your data stays strictly onshore. You aren't bouncing your clients' sensitive financials to servers over in California or Europe. Right. And what about the data exposure? Because I've heard some systems actually train themselves on whatever you upload. Yeah, that is a massive issue with generic tools. They very often use your confidential inputs to train their public models. Sunny, on the other hand, is read-only by default, and absolutely every single action is logged for audit purposes. Ultimately, Sunny is fully aligned with the Australian privacy principles, whereas generic tools have, well, ambiguous data handling at best.
Well, that definitely satisfies my compliance worries. But my next big problem is time.
I simply don't have the hours to teach a new system how Australian accounting actually works. Does it actually know the law?
It absolutely does. Sunny ships with a standard accounting legislation pack right on day one. It already knows the Income Tax Assessment Act, it actively monitors daily ATO rulings, ASIC instruments, the SIS Act for your self-managed super funds, and the Tax Agent Services Act. It is completely pre-configured for the Australian regulatory environment. Just think about how much time that saves. It monitors daily ATO rulings so your team doesn't have to manually check for updates or read through those endless bulletins. You don't have to train it on basic tax law because it already knows it.
Okay, can you walk me through a concrete example? How does this actually look on a standard Tuesday morning in my office? Sure, let's imagine a Tuesday morning. Step 1. Before you've even had your first sip of coffee, Sunny has already read the daily ATO rulings. Step 2. It automatically maps those regulatory changes directly to any of your active client engagements that are affected. Wait, so it actually knows which specific clients are impacted and then drafts the letter? Does it sound like a robot wrote it, or does it write in my firm's actual tone of voice? It drafts the advice letters explaining the changes entirely in your firm's specific tone of voice. No robotic jargon at all. Finally, step 4, your senior accountant simply reviews the draft and signs off. The expertise is still completely yours. The human is still in control, but the administrative heavy lifting is totally automated.
That workflow sounds brilliant. But look, my firm already runs on Xero and MYOB. We use Outlook for literally everything. I really don't want my team having to jump into yet another separate software screen all day.
And they won't have to. Sunny acts as an operating layer that sits directly on top of what you already have. It connects directly to Xero, MYOB, and Carbon for your practice management.
Oh, that's a massive relief. The thought of migrating a decade's worth of client data to a brand new platform was honestly giving me a headache.
Exactly. There are absolutely no messy migrations. It plugs right into Outlook, Microsoft 365, and SharePoint. It even connects securely to the ATO portal and ASIC Connect.
It basically pulls all those fragmented threads into one single source of truth. You ask a question, and it draws the accurate answer from every system at once.
All right, I'm convinced on the value. But adopting new systems usually means months of pain and disruption. How do we actually start this process without breaking my firm in the meantime? We completely understand that fear. The onboarding is highly structured and very practical. First up is the X-ray workshop. We sit down with you and map your specific workflows and the actual economics of your firm. We figure out exactly how much time is wasted per partner and find exactly where automation creates genuine leverage. Second, we design a phased roadmap with clear commercial outcomes. We only build what is proven to work. And third is deployment. We can have you live within days on secure Sydney infrastructure, and we include all the hands-on team training so your staff are totally confident from day one. A clear roadmap, local data hosting, and absolutely no offshore risks. This really looks like the right way to finally get my weekends back and let my senior team focus on the actual accounting work.
That is exactly the goal. We want to give your firm back its capacity and do it securely and compliantly. To everyone watching this explainer today, you simply don't have to accept the heavy admin burden as standard operating procedure anymore. You really can take control of your firm's future securely. Visit sunburntai.com.au to book an X-ray workshop and see exactly how this looks on your own client files. Are you ready to stop chasing correspondence and start advising again? Thanks so much for joining us today.